I have a lovely grandma, but in this video I will tell you where my grandma was wrong. And it took me almost 20 years to realize this. When I was younger, my grandma told me to always save my money and to put it in my little piggy bank. But neither she nor anyone else really explained to me in detail what exactly would happen to that money over time. My name is Hendrik, and when I reveal to you the true details behind the exact development of your savings value when you let it sit in a piggy bank or basically any other bank without receiving any substantial interest, it will probably blow your mind. On the other hand, it would probably blow my mind if you would take the initiative right now to subscribe to this channel and to hit the like button. Thank you so much in advance. Let's start. When I was a little kid, I was terribly afraid of losing money. To me, money just had this inherent value. I did not particularly like spending it, because then it would become less than before. Therefore, I never tried to ever look at the saved cash I had. To this day, I'm still not particularly fond of spending or losing money. And if you do not enjoy losing money either, chances are you do not enjoy it, this next part will be of interest to you. As you might already know from my previous videos, the economic concept of inflation has a big impact on our lives. Inflation describes the decrease of purchasing power of any given currency over time. Now, the problem with inflation is that it is not very tangible, is it? If you had $500 and you don't touch it, you would technically still have $500 on paper 1 year or 10 years later, would you? Let me help you visualize it. While researching for this video, I came across the site officialdata.org. This site has created an inflation calculator that uses the official records published by the US Department of Labor. The available records start in 1635. To use this calculator, simply put in the amount, your starting year, and the end year, and click on Calculate. On the top, you will have the results, and below some further explanations. And if you scroll further down, you can see a chart that displays how inflation erodes the value of a given amount over time. Have a look at this beauty. Well, actually, it is not looking so beautiful for your and my savings, is it? While you can calculate the erosion of value theoretically into the future and assume, for instance, an annual inflation rate of on average 2%, I found it more fitting to use actual numbers and to pretend it would be, let's say, 1990. First, we will look at the absolute development of purchasing power. Then we will check the absolute loss, and after that I will show you the relative loss. Especially the relative loss is what you will be able to easily keep in mind from now on into the future. It is the year 1990 and you do not have a smartphone where you can watch this YouTube video, as smartphones came to life only a couple of years later. Depending on your financial situation at that time, you might belong to the group of people who have $1,000 or $10,000 or $100,000 or even $1 million saved up. You may now decide to which group you belong. The big question here is what your money is actually worth after 5 years, 10, 15, 20, 25 or 30 years. If you belong to the group with $1,000, 5 years later your $1,000 would be worth only $814, 10 years later $720, 15 years later $635, 20 years later $569, 25 years later $523, and 30 years later your original $1,000 would be worth only $479. If you had previously decided not to belong to the $1,000 group, but to a different one, let's say $10,000, please pause the video right now and check how your initial savings developed over time. What is just so important to understand is that the decline of purchasing power at the end is a real-life loss for you and for me. So how much exactly is your absolute loss? Starting again from $1,000 in 1990, you would have lost $186 5 years later, $280 10 years later, $365 after 15 years, $431 after 20, $477 after 25, and $521 after 30 years. Finally, let's have a look at the loss in percent, which is something you might want to write down on a piece of paper right now and put it onto your fridge as a constant reminder of how inflation actually works. As a rule of thumb, you can say that you lose half of your savings within 30 years just by doing nothing. Let me repeat that. Because for me, when I learned about this for the first time, it was just mind-blowing. Depending on the actual fluctuation rates, you lose around half of your savings within 30 years. However, when you are watching this video, chances are you still might have more than 30 years to live. Let's assume you still have 60 years to go. Now it really gets interesting as we start in the year 1960. It must be noted that, as you can see, in the 70s, the inflation rates were much higher than today. They were somewhere between 5 and even 13%. But even today we see inflation rates of more than 5%, so it seems to be a valid idea to see the erosion of your savings based on actual historic inflation rates. What probably strikes you immediately is that you can clearly see the intense drop of value, especially in the earlier years with higher inflation rates. Starting in 1960, fast forward 30 years to 1990, your $1,000 would be worth only $222. If we fast forward 60 years, assuming you are now retired and would like to live off your $1,000 at least for a while, you would painfully need to realize that these $1,000 are now worth only $102. You, my friend, have just lost almost $900 just by keeping your money saved and not invested. This equals a relative loss of approximately 90%. Let me repeat that. This is a loss of approximately 90%. That's gonna do it, guys. So this is where my grandma was wrong. I hope this video helped you understand how expensive it really is for you to let your savings sit in your piggy bank or your bank accounts without receiving substantial interest rates, of course. The problem here is that we do not really see this loss, as $1,000 will still be $1,000 on paper at least, even 30 or 60 years later. So you gotta do something with it, right? If you got something out of today's video, please leave a like, comment and hit the subscribe button. This would really mean the world to me. Thank you so much for the support. If you think someone you know should see this video, please share it with them. And if you want to know more about finance and personal development, please feel free to check out some of my other videos. Thank you so much. My name is Hendrik. Until next time.